I think the first thing I want to say, live normally. Because when you're going to do something, you're going to do it anyways. See, the worst thing we can do is to actually get roped in. The worst thing you can do is actually lose your center. If you have your center, you're going to do what you need to do. Period. And the people say, well, how can you keep your center? Well, that's, I'm going to say, your problem, because that's where your priority is. And are the problems that we're going through trivial? They have always been trivial. All of the problems that we go through are trivial. If you think about it through the history, the kind of care that we have today, we didn't have. Um, if you think about anything that we're going through, it's kind of interesting. I was reading this book that's called something Progress Paradox. It was a great book. It basically collected all the statistics on happiness and things like that in relation to progress. And so, it's like it took the most common complaints. And this is like from the 90s. So this is actually like 2 decades old now at this point. But it took all the statistics in the 90s and basically looked at pollution. It looked at that. It looked at all the like water, like cleanliness, and it looked at healthcare, and it like basically kind of like listed like across the board. And what they found out is in the developed country, like in the U.S. particularly, most of the complaints that people had were what you call privileged complaints, right? So like the discrepancy between the very rich and even the middle class, the amount of money that they're making actually is becoming more disparate, but the lifestyle itself actually is becoming surprisingly what's the word for it? Not that different. And that was actually something that surprised me. But I was listening to it and it said, like, it used to be that if you had money, you could actually get special privilege in the hospitals and things like that. Now, if you want to get special privilege, you need to actually know someone in the hospital. Actually, you can't actually, unless you have so much money that you can actually get equipment for your own home and have people come because you're so rich. Like if you're rich, you can't actually what's the word for it? You need to, unless you bribe a significant amount, you can't actually now get better treatment. And so you can't, like plane wise, it used to be that people used to, now almost anybody gets on a plane. So that's actually going away. And then first class, even that's actually starting to like blur. So like it's kind of like all the things that used to be privilege for the people who had money, the discrepancy between that is going down. Like now, anybody can at least rent a yacht and have a yacht experience. Like all these experiences that used to be privileged experiences are going away. So it's kind of like interesting, the kind of complaints that we have. So now if you look at most of the problem that the US has is actually coming to the kind of problems that we have in terms of self-actualization, like better refinement, better health, better understanding, more peace. And those are the kind of things that we talk about, purpose. But it used to be not so long ago that the kind of things that we used to fight for were actually nowhere close to that. Actually, not too long ago, we'd be just fighting for security, just simply security, and that wasn't too long ago actually. Even after World War II, that was what you call, and mostly we were actually fighting for security, and that was, that was actually within the century, actually last century, but and so now we're in a place where, and this is actually what I'd like to say, self-growth, I want to say, is very, very important. And the reason self-growth is so important and personal peace is very, very important. And the reason I want to say this is because it's the stages for the next evolution. It's the stages for the next evolution of all mankind. And so let's say, for instance, if you can actually have more peace and be more centered, and you're not losing your own lifestyle because of what's going on, then you're actually adding to the people who actually can take care of themselves. You're actually adding to the next evolution. You're actually adding to, instead of coming from a place of fear where there's not enough to go around, you're actually coming from a place of abundance where the taking care of the self actually naturally actually flows out into taking care of other people. Because the key thing that we always talk about it, right? You put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on something else, right? If you're centered, you'll know what to do. I keep going back. I didn't say that's all that's needed. Key thing is no, not even close. But you're only going to do what you want to do. So you can panic and feel bad about it and not do anything, or you can feel good and not do anything about it. But if you're actually feeling good, then you'll be more likely to do something. And if you're feeling bad, then you may do something, but what you'll find out is the productivity is not the same. A human being that feels better always does more. I have not seen an exception to that rule. All I'm saying is, if you're not going to do something about it, then make sure that you take care of yourself, because when the time comes, at least you'll do something. But if you feel guilty about not doing something, and because of that you are losing sleep because of guilt, then you're not doing anything. But if you're centered, then even if you want to sacrifice yourself, then you'll be clear that you want to sacrifice yourself. And that's good. You know, I don't actually propose a lifestyle where, we get fat and, what's the word for it? I just take care of our needs. That's not spirituality. Spirituality is actually about a place that is beyond guilt, where we can come from a place of abundance. And therefore, our own personal health actually is not that significant. It's good. If we're healthy, then we can do more things. But what's more important is that if you believe that because of your health, here's why we do healing. And this sounds a little funny, but most of the time we live under this assumption that the reason we can't be our full selves and the reason we can't realize our full potential is because we're not healthy enough. But that's actually the reason that we give ourselves, because in reality we don't want to actually sacrifice. And so what you do is you just eliminate that, and you actually take care of the health, and once you have the health, you'll realize nothing has changed. At that point, some point along the journey, you realize it's kind of like the same thing as a person realizing no amount of money is going to make you happy. The only thing that actually is going to make us happy is to have a meaningful life. And meaningful life, by definition, is very sacrificial. And so the question is, where are you going to sacrifice your life? But you can't sacrifice your life out of guilt. But it goes back. You can't actually look at that unless you have some center, because your mind will be so panicked, you can't tell what you even want to do, right? So, I'll give you an example. So, some of you know this, but about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we all have our roles, but about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so the way I feel about everybody at Sunshine is I feel like a parent. And so, it's basically, and something happened where one Friday, there was an emergency and I needed to take care of some people. And, some of you heard this, but I was actually done. I was done by about 8, since like on Friday I start working. My day starts at 6:40 in class, right? And so at 8. But that day I had to work till 11 to 11:30, and that extra 2 hours, actually is it 2 hours? No, 8, 4. So 11. So what is that?
3.5.
3.5. That extra 3 to 3.5 hours may not seem like much, but so in my case, I run a very routine, regulated life, right? So for me, if I go push, I'm at the edge and I push, then I'm really over the edge. That's actually why I ended up sick. So I was explaining to some of you, but I was actually so depleted because I had drawn from my kidney energy to such an extent that I was chilled to the bones. That's what happens. Your temperature drops, your joints are aching, and you're chilled to the bone. You've actually drawn from your kidney energy significantly. I had to sit in the bath for an hour and a half just to warm my bones. But I'm fine with the sacrifice. I got no complaints. My next day is still my next day. You see, so when you're in purpose, it's okay, and it's okay if your body runs out. It's okay if you get depleted. It's just a daily course of your life. The question is, can you find that kind of life for yourself where when you are ill because of what you do, when you have run out, you're thinking, why is God doing this to me? And that's the thing. God doesn't do anything to us, right? Um, but if you do it right, you actually feel like one. You actually feel like, that this is, this is the care. This is how much God cares for us. That's actually what you get to feel. Um, and I have experienced more oneness since that time. And in my case, I answer the kind of questions you're asking all the time. And so my energy goes into actually taking care of people who want to be involved. And I can't actually be personally involved in it because if I get involved in that, at least not in this point in time, there may come a time where things get so desperate where I have to personally get involved in terms of the political things. But at this point, my job is to support the people who are more politically inclined to do that better. So we have our roles. Not everybody goes out to the war and fight. Some people are medics, right? But so having said that, I cannot get away from this, and I have to say this: if your heart calls for it, then do it. But don't get caught up in this. Be centered. Don't act from fear. You cannot act from fear. I don't act from fear out of principle. Other things are things going to hell in a handbasket? Most likely. But you panicking about it, it's not going to help anything. When you get attacked, several years ago, this actually happened where I think some of you probably heard this, but literally a crazy person was escaping from the mental institute, right? And ironically, the police cornered the person right on our street, right? So I was having, so this is when the classes were still going on at my place. So we're having a discipleship class. And so all of a sudden you see these headlights coming straight towards the home towards the window. And so there was panic. And I'm really grateful for my training because I could feel myself all of a sudden anchoring, centering, and then I was able to direct everyone just in case this was some crazy attack. Because at this point we don't know really what's going on, right? So we have to and then there's a gunshot because the police actually shot the tire out so that the person couldn't escape. And then with that punctured tire, the person drove the van into our garage. So from inside the house, you have to imagine it sounds like mayhem, right? And you can't actually behave as if there's mayhem. You have to behave as if things are normal, right? And so, I surveyed, I looked out, and then I made sure that everybody huddled towards the center because, it's not like you can actually just go to a room because you don't know from which wall the person's gonna come, right? And then I took everyone to the hallway between walls where it's the safest in our home. And then just in case a person may come in towards the back, what's the word for it? I gave actually a short sword to Shifu on that end. But I made sure that nobody else noticed it because I don't want the rest of the people panicking, right? Because he knows how to wield a weapon just in case. And then when I felt I went out to the front. In the front, they were all police, and I could tell that that's safe. So I ushered everyone out. So what happens if you lose your center and you panic? You can't make any decision. This nation currently is no different. And so this is actually where the priority is. Is the priority God? Is the priority being centered? Or do we want to panic? Because if we panic, we can't actually figure anything out. So this is a time where you really use your practices. This is when you really practice your gratitude practices, where you can be grateful. There are still things you can be grateful for. The very fact that we can still have this discussion, we need to be grateful for, right? We need to count our blessings. This is a great nation. It still is a great nation. And will this nation possibly be less greater for the next 20 years? Possibly. But Is it also possible we may need to go through that for us to really realize what we have? Also possible. We need to trust in the divine, that whatever is happening for a good reason, and that we need to actually play our role. And that's where we find meaning. We can't hope for things not to get bad. That's not the point. We have to look at what our role is. We have to look at what our daily practice is. We have to look at what our meaning of life is. And then we have to look at what our part in it is. And then if it's our part to take, we need to take action. If it's not our part to take, then we need to leave it alone. Such as not looking at media. Because if it's important, you're going to find out. Somebody's going to tell you, right? So, but having said that, in conclusion, what I want to tell you is just that, are these easy times? Is there a special way? Actually, no. These are the times when the things that you've learned, you really use them. So I'd like to say, be centered. And think about it consciously. Not from a panic place. If you panic, you can't figure anything out, right? Slowly, write it out. Do the journaling that you've learned. Slowly, go through it one by one. And then if this is something you need to take action on, take action. If you can't be in class because of something like this, I will personally give you an excuse action. This is a matter of, I'm going to say, national security, right? If anybody in class, wants to be absent because of something political, I'll be the first one to say go. And if you can convince that the whole rest of the class should be there, then I'll be there. Just make sure you convince me. So, no new teaching during these times.
There's no new.
No new teachings. There's only the old teachings to really treasure them and see how effective they are, because they're very effective. These go all the way back to people who had to have battles in the battlefield where your life was flashing in front of you. We just need to be grateful that, I'm just grateful that we're not in a situation where bullets are flying, where it's in Eastern Europe or some parts of the country. We've got it good. We've got nothing to worry about. We just need to do what we need to do. The best way to do it is stay calm. So, and best way to stay calm is to stay happy.